last 7 years of doing landscape photography, I feel like I've developed these 7 ideas that I've used to kind of shape my perspective and my mindset on my own landscape photography. And in this video, I'm going to share those 7 ideas that I've developed over 7 years of doing landscape photography. This is my Panasonic Lumix G85, and this is the camera I basically learned landscape photography on. I use this camera pretty much exclusively with only one lens, the 12 to 60 millimeter Lumix lens, for like over 2 years. And the reason I bring this up, especially for beginner photographers getting into landscape photography, is that you need to just buy a kit that works for you, that's probably affordable, and learn your camera. You know, learn it in and out, learn how the settings work, learn how it behaves in different situations. If you're just fumbling around your camera, just figuring out how to use it and how to adjust certain settings, you're not going to be able to, effectively take photos. So learn your gear as best as you possibly can. Again, I used this one for about 2 years, and then I ended up upgrading to the Lumix G9, which I've been using this camera for about 4.5 years, so even longer than the G85, and I've learned this camera in and out, and I understand how it works. And that is just so important when you're doing photography, is you have to know your gear. So the second idea that I want to share, and it really ties in with the last thing about knowing your gear and using it for a long period of time and understanding how it works, is that you don't want to make it all about the gear. You don't want to get in this mode that you think you have to constantly be acquiring new, better, more expensive camera equipment. Now, there are times where maybe you should buy new cameras if you're in a position to and you feel like it's going to help you develop your photography skills. But again, I've been using the same primary camera, the Lumix G9, for over 4 years, and I'm still taking, good photos with it. If anything, I'm maybe, slowly still improving my skills as a photographer, because it really isn't about the camera necessarily. You only need a camera that's like good enough to actually take decent photos. If you give a cheap camera to like a great photographer, they're probably still going to take great photos with it. But if you give a very expensive high-end camera to someone who doesn't know anything about photography, like, they're probably not going to take great photos with it. Any intermediate camera can work for you. You really don't need to spend, like, in most cases, like more than $1,000 on a camera, I don't think. Unless, again, maybe you're a professional and you do use it for certain things that require you to have a higher end camera, or, you just have the money and you really enjoy, gear and stuff. But yeah, just don't get stuck in the trap of thinking you need new gear all the time, because you're going to spend a lot of money and it's probably mostly going to be wasted. Third idea is one that I still like to remind myself quite regularly, and I think it's pretty important. The longer you do photography and the more you progress as a photographer, I think this actually becomes more valuable than it has for me. But it's basically the idea that there are objective rules and guidelines in photography, but your taste in photography, and everyone's taste in photography, is completely subjective for the most part. Like, one person might really love a photo that someone took, and another person might not like it at all. And it doesn't mean that the photo's necessarily bad or great. It just means that certain people like different things. And I think that's kind of applies to life in general. It's better to leverage this idea in a way to kind of hone in and develop your style and understand, what is my taste in photography and what do I like in a photo, and kind of start to understand, look at your photos and look at other people's work and see what you like in a photo, and try to practice that and apply it to your own photos, and that's how you're going to develop your style over time. And I do think that becomes more and more apparent the longer you shoot, because then you start to develop your style, you start to understand what works in photos, what doesn't work, what you like, what you don't like, even editing styles, how you like to edit a photo. All of these things play into how your style develops as a photographer, and it's going to change over time. So just keep that in mind. Not everyone's going to like your images, because, again, taste is subjective. It's not objective. The fourth idea, which I think this applies very heavily to beginners, but it also applies to people, intermediate and professional photographers, is that you really just need to get out and take photos and spend some time behind the lens. Just take photos. Get out as much as you can and just take photos as often as you can. You're going to learn a lot, especially when you're first starting out. The first year that I was doing landscape photography with my G85 here, I literally was going out, because I could at the time, I was going out 3 or 4 days a week and shooting. And just over a summer of 3 to 4 months of doing that, I learned so much about photography and, the types of photos I like to take and all these different things. And that goes back to developing your style as well. The more time you take photos, the more you're going to develop, especially in the beginning. I think as you become better, then you kind of have to focus more on the areas you want to develop. It becomes a bit more precise, I would say. But in the beginning, for beginners, not as much as like just take photos. So idea number 5 kind of plays off what I was saying earlier about developing your taste and style in photography, and that your preferences and your style and your taste are going to change over time. And that's really part of, you know, developing your craft and becoming a better photographer. You're going to learn what you like and you don't like, and it's all part of the process. When you start to discover your style and niche, then you can start to work on your strengths and weaknesses in those areas, kind of work towards the style that you want to develop. But this all goes with like developing your preferences as well, and kind of what you like in a photo. And you're just going to learn that with time. So yeah, your preferences and your style is going to change with time, especially as you continue to progress. Idea number 6 is maybe one of the hardest ones for me to try and implement into my photography, and I still struggle with it pretty much every single time I go out. But it's really the idea that you have to understand that you're not always going to take great photos, and oftentimes you're not going to take great photos. I would say most of the time you go out, you're not going to take great photos. And in reality, it's like every photographer wants to take great photos, but I think it's a very important lesson to learn that you're not going to take great photos, maybe even most of the time that you go out. It's part of the process, and without that process, without following and trusting that process, you're not going to take better photos. So in order to take great photos, you really have to put yourself in positions and capitalize on opportunities to take great photos, which goes back to what I was saying earlier, is just getting out and just shooting as much as you possibly can, because the more you go out and shoot, the more opportunities you're going to have to take great photos. Number 7, which is also a great one to practice, which I've tried to start doing over the last couple of years, is that you need to challenge yourself and don't get too complacent on doing a certain thing, because over time it's going to get boring if you're just taking the same photos over and over again, basically. And I found that if you're just shooting a certain way over and over again, first of all, you're just pretty much going to get the same results mostly over, you know, years, basically. It's great when you're first starting out, maybe to focus on one thing that you like. If you get complacent in that area, then you're going to stop developing, you're going to stop challenging yourself. So challenge yourself to do different things. Go out at different times of day, shoot with different focal lengths. I mean, maybe in some cases, maybe do use a different camera and learn a different setup if you can afford to do so, and it makes sense. If it helps, maybe look at different photographers' work to get different inspiration for different types of photos that you would like to take, and then, you know, take a different approach. That's sometimes what you have to do to change your mindset, to actually challenge yourself, to continue to grow and build your skills. So I hope maybe some of these 7 ideas were somewhat helpful or beneficial to someone. They're really just things that I've kind of come up with on my own over the years of just getting out and shooting and thinking about what ideas have actually helped me progress my photography and see it in a different way, so I could actually move past areas where maybe I was stuck on something, or, you know, understand why certain photos work, and, you know, so on and so forth. Trying to keep these videos a bit more concise and straight to the point. So maybe I'm hoping those kind of made sense to you guys, and if you did enjoy the content, feel free to subscribe to my channel below. Leave me a comment. Definitely helps, you know, when I see that people actually watch these videos and understand that there's actually someone behind the screen of a computer watching these. If you do want to support my channel, you can do so financially on my Ko-fi page, link down in the description if you would like to. If not, just subscribe and leave a comment. That helps out a ton as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.